Hi JavaScript, welcome back. We will be discussing all your ES6 features.
Hi, true false.
Let's start with the variable declaration. Why do you need let and const in addition to var?
Both let and const declare block scoped variables and they cannot be redeclared in the same scope. Whereas let is reassignable and const is non-reassignable. Here, the let and const variables cannot be accessed outside the block.
If I assign an object to the const variable, will that object be deep freezed?
No, properties can be modified in that object, but the variable reference cannot be changed. Here, when you try reassigning to variable a type error is thrown.
Will let and const variable declarations get hoisted?
No, let and const variables can only be used after their place of declaration is reached. This also means that a let and const variable can be used inside a function which is placed above the declaration of that variable and will be invoked only after the variable declaration statement. The place where the variables used inside this function is called a temporal dead zone. Here, function print let variable will be able to access variable a.
Will they create properties on global this as var does?
No.
Can you tell me how a block scoped variable can be declared?
Block statement, switch statement, try catch statement, for statement, function body, static initialization block. However, you cannot create separate variables for each case. For that, you have to create the variable inside a block in each case statement.
Let's discuss the arrow function.
Arrow function is the compact alternative to function expression. Arrow functions do not have their own binding to this arguments super. Arrow function cannot be used as constructors. Calling them with new throws type error. They do not have access to new.target. These are the syntax used for arrow functions.
Can you tell me how to convert a normal function to an arrow function?
Yes, function keyword has to be removed from anonymous function and you should place an arrow between arguments and function body. Remove the braces of the function body if it has only one statement and also remove the return keyword since return is implied in an arrow function. You can also remove arguments parenthesis if it has only one parameter.
What happens if I call this inside arrow function?
Arrow function establishes this based on the scope the arrow function is defined within and the this value does not change based on how the function is invoked. Here, the print a is an arrow function. Although obj is provided as a value for this binding, the this inside arrow function refers to this value to its enclosing scope. So it prints value 5.
Can I use a destructuring parameter without parenthesis in an arrow function?
No, for rest, default and destructuring parameters, you need parentheses. Also, if there are no parameters, you will have to include parentheses.
Can we write a named arrow function?
Yes, just assign the arrow function to a variable. Here, in order to make the function factorial call itself, it is assigned to a const variable.
Can you explain the destructuring assignment?
Destructuring assignment make it possible to unpack values from arrays object into distinct variables. Here are some examples of destructuring. There are two types of pattern. They are binding pattern and assignment pattern. Here, the array elements at index 0 and index 1 are assigned to variables A and B. To assign array elements at different indexes, say at index 0 and index 2, we can use a sparse array in the left-hand side like A, comma, B. If there are more elements in the left-hand side than right-hand side, then the extra variables will be assigned undefined. Also, you will be able to fetch the returned array elements separately into separate variables if a function returns multiple values in the form of an array. For object destructuring, we have to include the same property names as in the object in the right hand side. Here, property C and D of the object is assigned to variables C and D. Also, you will be able to fetch different properties of an object into separate function arguments if a function receives an object as input. You can also use different names in object destructuring. For that, we have to provide object property name first, followed by semicolon, followed by variable name. In order to access the nested property, we have to provide the same nested structure in the left-hand side as property E inside D is assigned to variable F. You can also assign default value. Only if the mentioned property value in the right-hand side is undefined, the default value is used. Split operator can be used to collect all the remaining array elements in case of array or properties in case of an object. You can combine both array and object destructuring. Here, instead of accessing the remaining array elements as an array, we only assign its length property to variable p. When you assign a primitive value, the boxed variant of the primitive value is used. Here, number 1 is converted to number object, then its two fixed property is accessed. You can also access the properties that are declared in the prototype object. Here, variable t is declared in the prototype object and it is accessible. When the variables are already declared, we can use assignment pattern. Here, the keywords let or const are not included. Also, Python style swapping of values of two variables is possible without a third variable. For object assignment patterns, we have to include the parentheses. Here, the keywords let or const are not included.
Great JavaScript, a big thumbs up. With this syntax, we will be able to write more concise code. Can you explain the triple dot operator?
Triple dot operator can be used as spread operator or rest operator.
Can you explain its usage as a spread operator?
Spread operator allows an iterator, such as array or string, to be expanded in places where zero or more arguments for function calls or elements for array literals are expected. In object literal, the spread syntax enumerates the properties of an object and adds the key value pair to the object being created. Spread operator can be used in three different places. It can be used to spread the array elements as arguments to function calls. Here, an array is spread in the sum function call. Instead of using the function.prototype.apply method, spread operator can be used. It can be used to spread an array inside another array. Here, ARR1 is spread inside ARR2. It can be used to spread an object properties into another object. Here, obj1 is spread inside obj2.
What happens when I spread an object inside an array?
You cannot. It throws type error. Only iterable values like array and string can be spread inside array. But you can spread an array inside an object. Here, the array ARR is spread inside obj.
What happens when I spread primitive values inside an object or array?
You cannot spread non-iterable inside array as mentioned earlier, but when you spread primitive values inside an object, no new properties will be created. Here, expanding the value true does not create new properties.
Can I use the spread operator multiple times in a function call?
Yes, here two arrays are spread while calling the sum function.
I think every spread operator usage in function calls can be replaced by the function.prototype.apply method.
No, spread operator can be used with constructor call as well, using the newly created object inside the constructor function, which is not possible with the function.prototype.apply method.
In which other scenarios the spread operator is used?
It is used to create a shallow copy of an array. Modifying the copy does not modify the original. It is used for prepending or appending one array into another array. Here, ARR1 is prepended and ARR2 is appended to new array ARR3. Elements to an array or properties to an object can be added conditionally. Here, only if ARR2 contains only odd numbers, it is expanded. Otherwise, an empty array is expanded. Here, if obj1 contains a property with the name A, it gets expanded. As we can expand primitive values inside an object, you can use the AND operator. If the condition does not satisfy, the primitive value false get expanded, adding no values. Expanding an empty array or empty object does not add any new elements or new properties to an array or object respectively. Note that expanding an object copies only the object's own properties and not the properties on its prototype object. Here, prototype of obj1 refers to an object with one property B, but the prototype of obj2 is different. It can be used to merge multiple objects. Here, obj1 and obj2 are merged to create obj3. Both obj1 and obj2 contain property B. The last assigned value 3 is taken for it.
How is it different from object.assign, which is also used to merge multiple objects?
Object.assign mutates the source object, whereas the spread operator creates a new object. Here, obj1 gets mutated. While merging a setter operator, the object.assign method will invoke set method, whereas spread operator does not invoke the set method. Here, while using the object.assign method, a log message is printed, whereas the spread operator does not print any message.
Shall we move to the rest operator?
The rest parameter allows a function to receive an indefinite number of arguments as an array, providing a way to represent variadic functions. There should be only one rest parameter for a function. Rest parameter should be the last parameter in the function and it cannot have a default value. Here, the function sum receives all its arguments as an array and returns the sum of all elements.
But we already have the arguments object, which will contain all the parameter values.
There are four differences between arguments and rest parameter. They are: the arguments object is not a real array, so array methods like reduce cannot be used on arguments object. Arguments has additional callee property which is deprecated. In non-strict mode, there is a sync between arguments object and method parameters. But in the case of rest parameter, there is only one parameter. Arguments bundle all parameters, but the rest parameter does not contain the named parameter defined before it.
What if I want to ignore some parameters in a function?
You can destructure the rest parameter, converting it to named parameters with a sparse array that will ignore some parameters. Here the first parameter is ignored.
Cool. What happens if I pass a single value to the rest parameter? Will it be used as is?
No, even if you pass a single array, the value is bundled in an array. If no value is passed, then the rest parameter will be an empty array. Here, parameter C will always be an array.
Nice. Can you explain for of syntax?
The for-off statement that operates on a sequence of values sourced from an iterable object. Here, the array ARR is the iterable and variable element receives value from the sequence on each iteration.
Can I use custom iterable objects?
Yes, this iterable object returns three elements.
Can I use the break or continue statement?
Yes, by using the same iterator object, the iteration starts where it was exited before. Here, in the array ARR, after iterating the first element, the loop is exited. Then another loop using the same iterator picks up where the last loop left off.
Nice. Can you explain map objects?
Map object holds key value pairs and remembers the original insertion order of the keys. Both objects and primitive values can be used as either a key or a value. The keys are unique.
Can I iterate the map object?
For of loop can be used to iterate it. It returns a two-member array, key comma value, of key value pair, following the insertion order for every iteration.
Map object is similar to object. Why do we need a map object?
Map objects are different from object in few ways. They are in map objects, the key can be a function, object or primitive, but key types allowed for object are either string or symbol. In map, the entries are iterated in the insertion order. For objects, there are various methods to iterate its properties. They are object.keys, object.getOwnProperty names, object.getOwnProperty symbols. Each method iterates properties based on the type of a property or its existence, whether it exists in its own object or prototype chain. In map, we have size property that returns the size of key value pairs, whereas in object, we can get length of array returned by object.keys method, which return object's own enumerable string key properties alone. Maps implement iterable protocol, whereas object does not implement iterable. Performance is better in addition and removal of keys in maps. For maps, there is no native support for serialization as in objects.
What are all the map object instance methods?
They are map.prototype.clear removes all key value pairs from the map object. Map.prototype.delete removes the given key and returns true if the key exists, otherwise it returns false. Map.prototype.entries returns a new iterator which provides a two-membered array for each iteration, iterating all the key value pairs of the map object. Map.prototype.forEach it accepts two parameters, a callback function and this arg. The callback function accepts three parameters, key, the key of the key value pair, value, the value of key value pair, and map object on which for each is called. When a value for this arg is provided, then it is used as a binding for this value for callback. Map.prototype.get returns the value associated with the key if it exists, otherwise undefined. Map.prototype.keys returns a new iterator object that contains keys for each element in the map object in the insertion order. Map.prototype.set sets the value for the passed key and returns the map object. Map.prototype.values returns a new iterator object that contains values for each element in the map object in the insertion order. Map.prototype of symbol.iterator same as map.prototype.entries method.
Wow. What happens if I use nan as the key?
Because nans are indistinguishable, it can be used as a key.
How to declare a map object with a set of key value pairs?
You have to pass a 2D array of key value pairs to map constructor. Also, you can convert a map object back to 2D array using spread operator or array.from method. If you want only keys or values as an array, you can pass map.prototype.keys method or map.prototype.values method return value to array.from method respectively.
How to clone a map object?
Just pass the original map to map constructor to get the clone.
How to merge multiple map objects?
You can use the spread operator to get all key value pairs of multiple map objects, then pass all the pairs bundled in an array to map constructor. The last repeated key wins.
Nice. Can you explain set object?
Set object lets you store unique values of any type. You can iterate through the elements of the set in the insertion order. There are some set composition methods. They are set.prototype.difference takes a set and returns a new set containing elements in this set but not in the given set. The order of elements in the return set is the same as in this. Here, st1 is a set of 3 multiples, st2 is a set of 5 multiples, and st3 is a set of 3 multiples that are not 5 multiples. Set.prototype.insertion takes a set and returns a new set containing elements in both this set and given set. The order of elements in the return set is same as that of the smaller of this or past object. Here, st1 is a set of odd numbers, st2 is a set of prime numbers, and st3 is a set of numbers which are both prime and odd. Set.prototype.symmetric difference takes a set and returns a set containing all the elements which are either in this set or given set but not in both sets. Order of elements in the returned set is first those in this set followed by the other set. Here, ST1 is a set of even numbers, ST2 is a set of perfect squares, and ST3 is a set of numbers which are either even or perfect squares but not both. Set.prototype.union takes a set and returns a new set containing elements which are in either or both of this set and given set. The order of elements in the returned set is first those in this set followed by the other set. Here, ST1 is a set of even numbers, ST2 is a set of perfect squares, and ST3 is a set of numbers which are either even or perfect squares or both. Set.prototype. Is disjoint from takes a set and returns a boolean indicating if this set has no element in common with the given set. Here, ST1 is a set of perfect squares and ST2 is a set of prime numbers. These two sets are disjoint, so the result is true. Set.prototype. Is subset of takes a set and returns a boolean indicating if all elements of this set are in the given set. Here, ST1 is a set of 4 multiples and ST2 is a set of 2 multiples. ST1 is a subset of ST2, so the result is true. Set.prototype. Is superset of takes a set and returns a boolean indicating if all elements of the given set are in this set. Here, ST1 is a set of 3 multiples and ST2 is a set of 6 multiples. ST1 is a superset of ST2, so the result is true. You can also pass set-like objects to these methods.
How should a set-like object be?
It should contain a size property that contains a number, a hash method that takes an argument and returns boolean, a keys method that returns an iterator of the elements in the set. A map object is a set-like object and can be passed as an argument to these set methods.
What are all the other instance methods of set?
They are set.prototype.add inserts a new element with the specified value into this if there isn't any value with the same value in the set. Set.prototype.clear removes all the elements from the set. Set.prototype.delete removes the element associated with the value and returns a boolean indicating whether the element was successfully removed or not. Set.prototype.entries returns a new set iterator that contains an array of value, value for each element in this set in insertion order. Set.prototype.forEach it accepts two parameters, callback function and this arg. The callback function receives three parameters, value, the value of each set element, value, the same as first argument, and set, the object on which for each is called. If the value for this arg is passed, then it is used as a binding for this in the callback function. Here, the values of the set are printed and also the sum of the values is calculated in the for each loop. Set.prototype.hash returns boolean asserting whether an element is present with the given value in the set. Set.prototype.keys returns an iterator containing all the elements of this set. Set.prototype.values and set.prototype of symbol.iterator of also return the same.
How to convert set to array?
Split operator can be used to convert set to array.
Is there a way to convert an array of numbers to an array of unique numbers using set?
Yes, just call the spread operator on the set object which is created by passing the original array inside an array literal to produce an array of unique elements. You can also remove duplicate characters in a string by passing the string value to the set constructor.
Great JavaScript. Let's move on to classes.
Classes are templates for creating objects. They encapsulate data with code to work on that data. Classes are special functions. A class can be defined in two ways, a class definition and a class expression. The body of the class is executed in strict mode even without the use strict statement.
How to define methods inside class?
You can use the exact same syntax used for creating method definitions inside object to define public methods. In classes, you don't need the comma separator. This refers to instance itself. Super can be used to access base class properties. When you have a constructor in base and child class, you have to invoke base class constructor using super. You can also define getter and setter functions similar to object getter and setter function declaration. Public methods, getter and setters are defined in prototype and are shared by all instances. Getter and setter properties are not enumerable in classes. You can define and declare the instance fields just by providing their name and value. You can define static fields similarly.
Can I use computed instance fields?
Yes, you can create. The computed property names are evaluated only once. This means that two instances cannot have different field names. Here, both instances obj1 and obj2 have the same properties.
What happens if I use this while creating computed properties?
This in the computer property name refers to the surrounding scope in which the class is declared. Here, this.a in the computer property name refers to the function test scope.
What happens if I use this in instance field declaration?
It refers to the class instance being constructed. Here the property B is declared using property A's value.
If I have property A in child class and I want to access the superclass property A, can I access it with super?
With super, you can access superclass methods but not instance fields. Here, superclass hello method return value is used in child class property A declaration. Calling super.a gives undefined.
Will field declaration evaluated each time a new instance is declared?
Yes, here the value of property A in the instance obj1 is different from property A in instance obj2.
Once an object is constructed for derived class, I can access derived class instance fields in superclass, but while instance field declaration, I cannot access. Why?
It is because instance fields of derived class are defined after super returns. The base class does not have access to the derived class fields. Here, print A method accesses the property A and prints 10, but while declaring property B, the property A was not available and property B is assigned undefined.
I can access the instance method declared below, but not instance fields declared below in instance field declaration.
Yes, all instance and static methods are added beforehand and can be accessed, while instance fields cannot refer to the field below it. Here, property B can access property A and instance method value to add, but property C cannot access property D.
I have a setter property in base class, and if I define a data property with the same name in derived class, the setter method is not executed. Why?
Class fields are added using object.define property. So field declaration in derived class does not invoke setter methods in base class. But when you assign a value in constructor using this, the setter method is invoked. Here, when derived 1 class is instantiated, the setter method for field 1 is not invoked. But when derived 2 class is instantiated, the setter for field 1 is invoked.
Can you explain static fields, methods, and blocks?
Static properties are defined directly on class and not defined on prototype like instance properties. So static properties cannot be accessed on the instances of the class. Instead, they are accessed on the class itself.
How can I access other static fields in a static field declaration in the same class?
Using this or class name. Here, property B is assigned the value of property A. Super can be used to access base class static methods for static field initialization in child class.
How to call a static property from a non-static method?
You can access by calling className.propertyName or this.constructor.propertyName. Here, printA method accesses static property A using class name and also from this.constructor.
How can I declare private properties?
You can declare private fields or methods by prefixing with hash symbol. The private properties can be accessed only within the class.
What happens if I access private property outside the class?
Type error is thrown. Here, when property hash A is accessed outside the class and type error is thrown.
Can I access base class private fields in subclass?
No, private fields can be accessed within the same class where it is declared. Avoid accessing private static fields using this. Here, when you call subclass.getA, the getA defined in the base class is accessed, but accessing a private variable using this throws type error since this is subclass now.
Can I make the constructor private?
There is no native support, but you can implement it using a flag. Here, there is a factory method create which uses a flag has is internal constructing to create the instance. When you try to instantiate the class from outside, it throws type error.
Great. Can you explain the promise?
Promise object represents eventual completion or failure of an asynchronous operation and its resulting value. A promise has three states. They are pending. The initial state which either be fulfilled with a value or rejected with an error. Fulfilled, which means the operation is completed successfully, and rejected, meaning the operation is rejected. A promise is settled whether it is fulfilled or rejected. There are three methods in promise. You can associate resolution and rejection handlers by passing as first and second argument to the then method. You can associate rejection handler alone by passing as an argument to the catch method. Handler passed to the finally method is called when the promise is settled. All three methods return a promise so that it can be chained further.
Can you explain promise concurrency?
Promise class offers four static methods to facilitate async task concurrency. Promise.all fulfills when all promises are fulfilled or rejects when any of the promises is rejected. Here, promise objects P1, P2, and P3 are bundled into an array and passed to promise.all method. Since all promises are resolved, promise.all returns a fulfilled promise with an array of resolved values of past promises, maintaining the same order as value. Promise.all settled fulfills when all promises settle. Here, when the resolved promise P1 and promise P2, which eventually will be rejected or passed to promise.all settled, it returns a fulfilled promise with an array of values, where each array element has two properties. An array element can have properties status and value if the corresponding promise is fulfilled, or the array element can have status and reason if the corresponding promise is rejected. Promise.any fulfills when any of the promises fulfilled, rejects when all promises reject. Here, since a fulfilled promise P1 is an array element and it is the first promise to fulfill, its value is used as the resolved value for the promise returned from promise.any method. Promise.trace fulfills when any of the promises fulfilled or rejects when any of the promises rejected. Here, two promises P6 and P7 are passed to promise.trace. Since P7 is settled first and it is rejected, the function passed to catch function is executed, passing the rejection error as argument.
Can you explain other promise static methods?
Promise.resolved returns a promise that is resolved with a value. This method also flattens multiple layers of nested denables. If the past value is a promise, then the value is returned. Otherwise, it is a shorthand for new promise of the function that takes resolve as the first argument and returns the value, where value is the argument passed to promise.resolve method.
Promise.reject returns a promise that is rejected with a reason.
Promise.try takes a callback function and arguments that will be passed to the callback function. The callback function can return a value or promise or throw an error. If the callback function returns a value, then this method returns a fulfilled promise with the fulfilled value as value returned from callback. If the callback function returns a promise, then that promise is returned. If the callback throws an error, then it returns an already rejected promise. Promise.withresolvers does not accept any parameters and returns an object with properties. Promise, a promise object; resolve, a function that resolves the promise; reject, a function that rejects the promise.
Nice. Can you explain symbol?
Symbol is built-in object whose constructor returns a symbol primitive, also called symbol value or just symbol. Every symbol of call returns a unique symbol. Every symbol of key returns the symbol associated with the key in the global symbol registry if it exists, otherwise it creates a new symbol. Here, these three statements return different symbol objects. Symbol cannot be instantiated with new keyword and it throws type error. To get the already created symbol, use symbol.forof, and for retrieving the key for created symbol, use symbol.keyForof. So the statement returns true.
What happens when I pass symbol of value to symbol.keyForOf method?
It returns undefined.
Nice. Can you explain the default and rest parameter?
Default function parameters allow named parameters to be initialized if no value or undefined is passed. Expression used to assign default values would be synchronous. Earlier parameters are available to later parameters. The rest parameter allows a function to accept an indefinite number of arguments as an array, and we already saw this while discussing the spread operator.
Can I assign default value to destructuring parameters?
Yes, a common practice is to assign an empty array or empty object as default value, and that makes it possible to call the function without passing any value for destructuring parameters.
Can you explain the ES6 string functions?
String.prototype.includes performs a case-sensitive search to determine whether the given string may be found within this string, returning true or false as appropriate. It accepts two parameters: search string, the string to be searched, and position, the start index from which the search has to be started. If the search string is empty, then this method returns true. String.prototype.starts with determines whether this string begins with the characters of the specified string, returning true or false as appropriate. It accepts two parameters: search string, the characters to be searched at the start of the string, and position, the start position at which the search string is expected to be found. String.prototype.ends with determines whether this string ends with the characters of a string, returning true or false as appropriate. It accepts two parameters: search string, the characters to be searched for at the end of the string, and end position, the end position at which the search string is expected to be found.
What if I do not pass any value for string.prototype.includes method?
Any value that is passed to this method will be caused to string type, so undefined will be caused to string undefined.
Can I pass a regex for the search string in string.prototype.includes method call?
No, it throws type error. These rules of coercing and not accepting the regex value apply to search string parameters in all three functions.
Can you explain the ES6 array functions?
Array.prototype.entries returns a new iterator object that contains key value paths for each index of the array. When used on sparse arrays, this method iterates the empty slots as if they have the value undefined. Array-like objects can be passed to this method. It expects the passed object to have length property and integer keyed properties. Array.from static method creates a new shallow copied array instance from an iterable or array-like object. It accepts three parameters: array-like, an iterable or array-like object to convert to an array, map function. If provided, every element to be added to the array is first passed to this function, and this function's return value is added to the array instead. This arg value to be used for this binding while executing map function. The map function receives two arguments, element and index. It never creates a sparse array. If a particular key is not found, then it will be assigned undefined. Array.prototype.keys returns a new array iterator object that contains the keys for each index in the array. When used on a sparse array, the empty slots are iterated as they have the value undefined. Array-like objects can be passed to this method. It accepts the passed object to have length property and integer keyed properties. Array.prototype.find returns the first element in the provided array that satisfies the testing function. If no value satisfies the testing function, it returns undefined. It accepts two parameters, callback function, the testing function, and this arg value passed as this binding for callback function. The callback function accepts three parameters, element, the current element of the array, index, the index of the current element, and array, the array instance on which find method is called. It stops the iteration immediately when the element is found. For a sparse array, empty slots behave as the same as undefined. Array-like objects can be passed to this method. It accepts the passed object to have length property and integer keyed properties. Array.prototype.findIndex returns the index of the first element of an array that satisfies the provided testing function. If no element satisfies the testing function, it returns -1. Similar to array.prototype.find, it accepts two parameters, the callback function and this arg. It stops the iteration immediately when the element is found. For a sparse array, empty slots behave the same as undefined. Array-like objects can be passed to this method. It expects the passed object to have length property and integer keyed properties.
Can you explain the ES6 math functions?
Math.truncOf static method returns the integer part of the number by removing any fractional digits. Math.signOf returns 1 or -1, indicating the sign of the number passed as argument. If the input is 0 or -0, it will be returned as is. Math.cbrt static method returns the cube root of a number. Math.log2 of static method returns the base 2 logarithm of a number. Math.log10 of static method returns the base 10 logarithm of a number. All these methods returns nan if the value cannot be passed as a number.
Can you explain the ES6 number constants?
Number.epsilon static data property represents the difference between number 1 and the smallest floating point number greater than 1. Its value is 2 power minus 52. Number.minSafe integer static data property represents the minimum safe integer. Its value is minus of 2 power 53 minus 1. Number.maxSafe integer static data property represents the maximum safe integer. Its value is 2 power 53 minus 1.
Can you explain the ES6 number functions?
Number dot is integer of static method determines whether the passed value is an integer. It returns false for nan and infinity. Number dot is safe integer of static method determines whether the passed value is a safe integer. It should be within range minus of 2 power 53 minus 1 to 2 power 53 minus 1. Both methods always return false when the value is not a number.
Can you explain the ES6 global methods?
Is finite of determines whether a value is finite. A finite number is not a nan or infinity. Value will be close to a number if necessary. Is nan of determines whether a value is nan. Value will be closed to a number if necessary. Since it causes the value, for example, it will convert empty string to 0 and boolean to 1 or 0. The more reliable way to check whether a value is nan is to use number.isNanOf method.
Can you explain modules?
Instead of creating a single large script, you can separate them into many modules. You can import one module into another module. In the HTML file, you have to include the script tag with type equal to module attribute to use the JavaScript modules. The functions and variables declared inside modules will not be available in global scope. Those properties are only available in the module scope. The script in the module runs in strict mode by default. You can also import CSS files and JSON files as modules in a module. In order to use objects from other modules in a module, the other module must export those objects. You can export variables, functions, classes from a module. Here in the index.html file, we are importing main.js file. In main.js file, we are importing a function from DOM-utils.js file and a JSON object. While importing a JSON object, we have to specify the type using the with keyword followed by type colon JSON surrounded by curly braces. This looks similar to destructuring parameters. This is how you import named exports from another module. Then we get the DOM object of OL element and pass it along with the to-do list obtained from JSON object to create list items method. Inside create list items, we create li element with text value as array element and append to input DOM object. This is a very basic example of modules.
Thanks for explaining the ES6 features.
Thanks, bye.
Bye. Thanks. If you find this video valuable, you may share it with others. If there are mistakes, please mention them in the comment section.